To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate power. And to manipulate power is to manipulate possibilities. Welcome, welcome to the show. Got a great show for you. It's the first show of the year, 2024. Hey, I'm gonna have to hurt you guys' feelings a little bit. It's not actually the real new year, y'all. if if you do your study and your research, it's not the new year. Spring is the new year, y'all. The way the creator and if those Bible scholars read it, you would see that right in March or the month of Aviv or Abib or even Nissan is the beginning of the year. So anyway, you can go ahead and do your resolutions again in March if you want to in the spring. Got a great show for you today. I got one of my good friends in the scholarship world that he's going to be on the show today. I'm gonna let y'all wait, marinate on that a little bit. But first, we're gonna talk about we had a great Kwanzaa event at the African History Museum. It was great. Your brother Antonio is putting his hand in another ring. We served some African food there. And then, I'm gonna be doing a little bit of catering. So if you guys want to be the life of the party or bring something different to the party, serve some African food, and we're gonna be doing a little catering. So doing Dr. King's Day or any other family event, give me a call. We're gonna take limited orders if you want to get some African food and be the life of the party. 216-323-6155. Give me a holler. And in the remote studio, we got our good brother, Vince Robinson. What's up, Vince? What's going on?
Well, we are streaming live to Facebook and YouTube at this very moment. So if you want to be involved in the show, all you have to do is log on and you can type your comments in and we'll be able to post them to the air. You might have a question. We might be able to squeeze that in as well. So all you have to do is go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can also go to my personal page, my YouTube channel, and you can go to Hamtonio's YouTube channel, which is The Journey with Hamtonio, and you can get clued in. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you can see our guest is here. He is none other than Kaba Kamene. He is a well-respected and internationally known scholar. He's an educator. He's also someone who I consider to be a historian because he always gives us information about the past and its relationship to the present and the future. So with that, we'd like to welcome the 360 Info Network, this great rising, Brother Kaba Kamene. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Peace and blessings and happy new year. And I just appreciate this opportunity to speak to the community. So to my brother Hamtonio and to my brother Vince, I just thank you for inviting me. This honor to be able to be with the community and to be able to share this information. It's interesting because I always tell people when they invite me, they ask, is there anything in particular that you'd like to talk about? And what I often say is normally a lot of what I want to say starts with the people that open up the program, such as yourselves. Both you, Brother Vince, and Brother Hamtoni have said something that's very interesting just in the few moments that we've been live here. And number one is, Brother Vince, when you were talking about history and bringing forward the past in order to understand the future. For those that may not know my background is education, educating our children. I spent 31 years in the New York City Board of Ed educating our children. And I've spent 14 years in college. I've taught every grade. I've taught every subject. Through my career, I've been an administrator. So I've seen the system from a lot of different angles, and I've been able to be exposed to children from pre-kindergarten straight through college. And also I've had the opportunity and the very interesting pleasure and honor of working with children who are in what we call special ed classes. And one of the things that I'd like to begin just thinking about is children always ask me, Brother Kaba or Brother Booker T, when you go back to those days, they say, why do I need to know this? When I would teach them about Kush and I would teach them about Kemet or Egypt, I would teach them about ancient Nigeria or Ghana. I would teach them the ancient world of the past. And they'd say, why do I need to know the past? And I likened the analogy of the importance of understanding history from its deepest point, like a slingshot. A slingshot, you put a projectile in and you pull it back. And the further back you pull it, the further in front of you you're going to project it. Well, I look at knowledge of history the same way. I look at it like if you take your mind, if you allow your mind to go into the projectile, and if you can pull yourself back into the past, the further in the past you pull yourself, the further into the future you project yourself. The idea of the slingshot is not just to pull it back and leave it there. So going into the past has its place, but it's not to go back there to stay. The idea of going back is to go forward. And so I've often said that prophets are not psychics, they're just good historians. Because when you know what happened in the past, you can interpret what is happening in the present, and you can predict what's going to happen in the future. And when it happens, everybody thinks it's a psychic phenomenon. They think you done a psychic network. In reality, you just know history. And when you know history, you can understand the present and you can predict what's going to happen in the future. Brother Antonio, you spoke about the idea that this is not New Year. And what's interesting about it is that we live it all the time. We know it, it's there, but it just goes to show you how when the way the mind works is that you could be living in the untruth and at the same time accept the untruth as the truth. And when someone gives you an illusion and you accept it as your reality, it becomes your reality.
Absolutely.
So let's look at the months. We know when the new year is. We understand that. Just look at the word October. Okay, what does the word October mean? What is the fundamental meaning of October?
Eight.
It's 8. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, November is 9. Deci is 10. Okay, but now what happened? What happened was, have you ever noticed how interesting it is that you have the first of the month, but at the same time the signs change somewhere in the third week of the month?
That's right.
And so you wonder, well, why does that happen? And that is because our ancient ancestors had multiple calendars. This calendar that we're on is a valid calendar, but it's an agricultural calendar. And because Gregory because this is a Gregorian calendar, but because Gregory didn't understand how to measure time, he just took this calendar and used it. Like, for instance, there is a leap year calendar. A leap year calendar in the African world basically was leap year. Now we have leap year, but every 4, like we're going to come up on a leap year now. Every time there's a presidential election, that's going to be a leap year. So at the end of they done took a day from here, a day from there, and then after every 4 years, you add a day to the calendar. But that should be called leap day. Why is it called leap year? Because originally, every 1,460 years, our African ancestors added a year to the calendar, so it became 1,461 years that completed the cycle of 365.25. See, we have multiple calendars. We're only dealing with one because we're living in a superficial world. I call the people in the Western world superficial sapiens, because they could never get deep into the African knowledge. And for those that know James Brown used to say, I want to get down. But in order for me to get down, I got to get in deep. Western civilization doesn't get down because it can't get in deep. And so when you look at how to structure the calendar as it relates to when the signs change, what you then would have is from what we call the month of December until January, you have another month. That would be the 11th month. And then you have the month that goes from the middle of January to the middle of February. Then you have the month that goes from February until March. And March is when the new year comes with what we call spring. And that is how the calendars should be arranged, not by having the first of the month to the end of the month. It should go through the signs, because that's when the new year happens. But black folk are heavy. So you don't have to take away this year that ended on what they call December 31st, because they didn't even understand that. But you can still have that year, because that's the agricultural year that takes you through this. What we have is 4 seasons. What the ancient world had was 3. So that even in the beginning of this conversation, you both have said such phenomenal things that we as a people have bought into an illusion that we don't even know what time it is. You don't know what time it is. There's no way you can place yourself in space, because time is history and space is geography. And one of the most important transitions we make is the time-space continuum of which our ancestors lived and they breathed. And we are now living in a world that is so superficial that they done took us in our brilliance and they have nullified our genius. And what I've done is gone into the system trying to bring it back. So Brother Vince and Brother Hamtonio, Happy New Year.
You know what, you said something. It's and something that I'm really coming to bring in fruition about this thing about time and timing. Would you agree, Brother Kaba, that with timing, just like, I mean, we should really look at that and hold that, this whole thing about time and cycles in high regard, because things happen on the planet during certain times, and those things affect you, and a lot of times we wonder, why things is happening to you, and things are going on around you, dealing with these cycles that the creator has put together, and dealing with planetary alignment, cosmic energy, and things like that. That's why you got the time when you talk about when people are being born in zodiac, it affects things on the planet. So when the point I'm making, Brother Kaba, could you explain to them how, by doing things out of time, how it can affect your life in a good way or a bad way, because you're operating out of sequence and out of time and out of rhythm, and how important it is that when our ancestors said and dealt with things and dealing with time, how important that was to them.
You know, it's interesting, Brother Hamtonio. I think that one of the cornerstones to how we can get back into the cycle of things, as I think is what you're leading to, is to go back to nature.
Yes.
Nature was our first teacher. Everything that you need to know is in nature. And you just watch. When I say nature, I'm talking about the botanical world, which is plants. Even plants know how to act. You see, even animals know how to act. They live by instinct. And instinct is a way of living that you follow nature's call. When it's time to eat, you could look at a lion and a lioness, and you could look at gazelles. If it ain't time to eat for the lion and the pride of the lion, which is the group of lions, gazelles could be jumping all over their heads. Gazelles could be playing around and having a whole bunch of fun right in front of the lion. And the lion and the lioness is just going to sit there and chill out. But the moment nature tells that lion and lioness to eat, those gazelles can pick it up immediately. And they're heading for the grasslands. They're gone. But they also know one of them is going to be dinner. That is how deep nature is. That they don't do anything out of place. That's instinct. Now, we as humans have been given 3 gifts that separate us from the botanical world and from the animal world that we belong to. We're part of the animal world. We're a higher evolution of the animal world. It began as life began. And in my book, Spirituality Before Religions, this is what I'm talking about in the beginning. I'm talking about evolution. And then I get into involution. And you know what's interesting? If you took a ruler, a 6-inch ruler or a 12-inch ruler, evolution is like the boundaries of that ruler Let's say it's 12 inches. Once you get to 12 inches, you can't go no further. So that in evolution as a human being, we started first in the waters as bacteria. And then from bacteria became plant. And then plant became fish. Fish, it became amphibian. Amphibian became reptile. Reptile became mammal. That's simple how evolution was. And then the mammal went through various changes and evolutionary changes. There is there is the beginnings of the mammalian life that go back millions, if not billions of years. It's called hadroconium. And hadroconium was at its biggest, no bigger than the last top digit of a pinky. And out of that mammal evolved all of the different species that would lead up to us as human beings. Evolution, 12 inches. When the head got the right size, the lungs got the right size, the knees started doing what they were supposed to do, the toes did what they supposed to do, everything came in to what it was supposed to be. Evolution, physical change, while adapting to its environment, basically remained the same. Basically remained the same. But then involution started. And involution, where we were given three gifts. We were given knowledge or intellect, reasoning that was able to manipulate that knowledge, and language, which allowed us to bequeath to others what we had reasoned that we knew. Those three gifts took the human being to the point where they could look to nature with the intellect that nature gave them, reasoned through what nature told them to do, and then the language that allowed us to talk to each other to transmit this knowledge. That was good. It was a blessing. It was a gift. It made the human being a masterpiece of the universe. But at the same time, it allowed us to tell nature no. It allowed us to be able to decide for ourselves whether or not we were going to follow nature or not. And in Africa, being the obedient children of nature that we were, we followed nature's course. And nature opened up for us by giving us this language that is called the click language. The first human family is known as the Twa Mbuti Khoisan of Central and Southern Africa. The first human family that came out of Homo sapiens sapien. The first ones that had the intellect, that had the reasoning, that had the language. We derogatorily call them pygmies. We laugh at them. We joke about them. But the reality of it is, if it wasn't for them, not one of us would be here today. We pay homage to the Twa Mbuti Khoisan people of Central and Southern Africa. If you wanted to see pictures of who they were, look to the Kung people, the Ikung, K-U-N-G. Just Google Kung, K-U-N-G, of Southern Africa, and you will see those individuals that came from the original human family. You can go to Central Africa, to the Ituri forest. Google Twa Mbuti people. You'll see the first family. That's who the first family was. And when they got their show together, then they took it on the world. But the point that I'm making, to go back to what you asked me, Brother Hamptonio, is that in that knowledge, we began to develop what is 6 dimensions. And the first 3 dimensions is length, width, and depth, which basically is 3D, 3 dimensions. But when you manipulate those 3 dimensions, and when you go deep, remember James Brown said he wanted to get down, so you want to get in deep. When you get down inside those 3 dimensions, what you do is you move to the next dimension, the 4th dimension, which is called time-space continuum. I thank my brother, Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, for this information in his book, Dark Light. If you want more information, Edward Bruce Bynum talks about these these dimensions, these 6 dimensions that we live in. And this time space continuum allows you to know and understand time, which is history, and space, which is geography. And in that 4th dimension, I've heard people say, oh, like, oh, we've done this before, they feel that, oh, wait a minute, I just deja vu. Okay. I've been here before. Well, yeah, you have, because before you were even conceived, your book was written. So it's like if you wrote a book and then read the book and said, oh wow, I remember this. Well, of course you do, because you wrote the book. You wrote the book before you came here. And so the time-space continuum allows you to understand that you have always been here. When I talk to you about bacteria, we were here before bacteria, but we were in a different mode. We were here before the Earth was here. We were here before the solar system was here. We have always been here. It just happened that our mommy and daddy's egg and spermatozoon fertilized us and concretized us into existence. But our energy has always existed. It will always exist. And we get caught up in what we call death, but death doesn't exist. Death is but another doorway in the eternal temple of immortality. It's just another doorway that we go through. When we were conceived, we came through the door in the beginning, and we were fertilized. We were conceived. And through the fertilization of mommy's egg by daddy's spermatozoon, we were brought into existence. And that was a doorway. We went through 10 months of gestation, and then we were born. That's another doorway. And then you grow, you age, you die, you decay, and then you resurrect yourself again. To African people, when you were conceived, your spirit died. And it was entombed in this thing we call a body. It was locked in. It was a sarcophagus for your spirit, for your ka. And when you died, you were born again. And that is when you were released from this coffin, which we call the body, and we were returned back from whence we came. And this is why Black folk, we mourn the physicalness of a person passing away, but we celebrate them going home. That's why we call them going home ceremonies or homegoing ceremonies. But then from the time-space continuum, if you start getting real deep, you get into the 5th dimension, which is light. You walk into light. And when you walk into the light, people can see it. We call it the it factor here. There's something about that person. They're walking in the light. And the 6th dimension is the footprints you leave that others will follow. In science, we call it gravity. I don't know if we understand what gravity is, but it's the imprint that we leave on the planet. So we are 6-dimensional people living with superficial sapiens. We're super sapiens, living with superficial sapiens, not knowing that we're super sapiens because we are like whales that are living in goldfish bowls. And we're trying to grasp for oxygen. It's like a whale in a goldfish bowl. This is why we see the pathologies that Black folk go through, because we know we want to get down, but we're in a society that can't get deep.
Okay. You know what? And I can definitely relate to that. And most African Americans can relate to that, because you feel like, even on your jobs and things that and I think all of us can relate to this. And you get on the job, you find out, what it takes to do the job, and you're trying to understand the system, and then you sit back and you look at the system, you like, wait a minute, why is they going all the way around the block to do this right here? And you be looking like, wait a minute, it's a better way to do that. And that's why we came up with so many creative inventions on how to do some things, because we like, wait a minute, all you got to do, master, is do this and do that. And so that's our inner spirit, I believe, is talking to us, because this man got you trapped into a way of seeing things. And Doc, you can relate to this. which are what's the Nigerian brother that did with the grand field theory that he was working on Einstein's project that you work with, and he was saying that these guys would never understand it because they didn't know African spirituality to complete the equation. Just expound on that real quick, brother Kaba.
Dr. Gabriel Oyibo is his name.
Yes, yes.
Oyibo, Oyibo. Brilliant scholar. Was nominated for the Nobel Prize. I never told him this. I always knew it, but never told him. They'll never give it to you. They'll never recognize that he came up with called the Grand Unified Theory.
Yes.
And basically, the Grand Unified Theory, when you break it down, is that it is one formula that unites two formulas that are very important. One of them comes from the quantum theory. The quantum theory is studying the world from the skin in, the atoms, the small world, the inner world, the tiny world, quantum, okay? The proton, neutron, electron. There's formulas that talk about the atom. And then you have Albert Einstein in particular, but others came up with the concept of the general law and the special law of relativity. The special law studies electromagnetism, and the general law studied gravity. There are laws that govern the outer world, the big world. And what you'll notice is that when you study science in the atom, you have a nucleus, and in the nucleus, there's a neutron and there is a proton. Circling around the nucleus is an electron. There are formulas that deal with that. But at the same time, when you look up into the heavens, you'll notice that there are planets that revolve around the sun. And there are formulas for that. That's the general and special law of relativity, the outer world. And the nucleus of the atom with the electron is the inner world, or the quantum physics or quantum mechanics.
Gotcha.
What Albert Einstein and others wanted to do was, there is such a similarity between the inner world and the outer world. Is there one formula that unites both? And it was called the Grand Unified Theory. That theory that unites the inner world with the outer world and will tell stories. When I first met Dr. Oyibo in 1990, we talked about those concepts. And he began to tell me stories about his work as a mathematician and as a physicist. And I began to say, but wait a minute, for some reason, he getting deep with me, but I've heard that story before. And then I began to realize, well, brother, you're talking about the Shabaka stone, because that's what the Shabaka stone is.
Mm-hmm.
The Shabaka stone is a theory created by a pharaoh of the 25th dynasty by the name of Shabaka in Kush, who came upon a document that was much older, that was worm-eaten. And he said, this is an important document. This is a scientific treatise of our ancestors. So let's copy it for all time and space so it don't get ruined. So they carved it on a stone. It's called Shabaka stone. I wrote a book about this. Dr. Gabriel Oyibo, when he revised his book on his Gagu, the God Almighty Grand Unified Theory, he included a chapter about Shabaka stone in that, through our conversations, that I learned so much through him in math and physics. And then he understood something as it related to our ancestors who had spoken about the Grand Unified Theory that unites all those worlds, the inner world and the outer world. And if we as an African people, through nature, understood what the Grand Unified Theory was, there would be nothing that happens in our life that we could not overcome. Because basically, in short, what the Grand Unified Theory says, what Shabaka stone says, is that if you knew how the universe came into existence, you would know how you came into existence. And if you unified how the universe came into existence with the way you came into existence, you would understand the secrets of the universe and whatever it was that you needed to do, whatever you needed to do to overcome. And you know something? Our ancestors on the plantation knew the grand unified theory. They may not have called it that. They may not have studied it. For Black folk to go through their day and live, Brother Vince and Brother Hamtonio, and to all those who are tuned in, for our ancestors to be able to do what they did, no matter how much you want to talk about literacy and if they could read and if they could calculate, they was operating on nature's time. And when you operate on nature's time, nobody can get in your way because you're operating on a level that goes beyond the superficial realm. Western civilization is so superficial. It is so shallow. They
Yes.
only deal with the first 3 dimensions. They've never broken out of the 3 dimensions. And when they do, they start writing books called New Age. The New Age ain't nothing but the universal cosmic age. Ain't nothing new. It's new to them. But it's not new to us. We live it every day. The fact that Black, if you Black and still alive in what we call 2024, you're a miracle, whether you realize it or not. You don't realize how great you are. See, we really don't understand how great we are as a people. This is one of the great challenges that we face. We really don't understand our greatness, family. Because if we did, we would already solve this situation. We really would have solved this already. We are such a great people.
Wow, that's, you know what, you put that together eloquently, and I love your analogy. That I think you kind of broke it down a little bit to where our listeners and myself can understand. We're gonna bring brother Vince into this conversation because he likes getting into the cosmic quantum type of conversation as well. Brother Vince.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to go back to what we were talking about in terms of time, and you invoked the different dimensions, the third dimension, fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions. But I want to put this into perspective so that folks can really understand what it means, because there's conversation now about how some of us are actually entering the fifth dimension. We have a consciousness and awareness of it. Can you talk a little bit more about what it is like for to exist in the fifth dimension versus being stuck in a third dimensional reality?
In terms of, if you notice, they've been doing a lot of things, books and TV shows about people who have died but come back. People who have had heart attacks and they've died, but they re-enter into their body and they come back into consciousness. They will all tell you something very interesting, and that is they saw the light and they started walking towards the light. But as they began to come back into consciousness, as they came back into life on earth, they moved away from the light. African folk would tell you, you've always been in the light. You've just never been conscious of the light. The light is that supreme knowledge and wisdom. That the light is when Black folk, I tell you, I so admire us for what we have gone through as a people, yet we still can smile. Hamtonio, one thing about you, I always tell you, one thing about you, you enjoy laughing. No matter what your life may be, no matter what you may be going through in your occupation and the things that you have seen in your occupation, you still have the ability to find goodness. The same thing with you, Brother Vince, and everybody else out here. We are a people who we understand. We are in the light. We just don't know it. We're not conscious that we're in the light because we are being attacked so much, and because we have bought into the illusion of Western civilization, of which they will never understand. This is why I tell people, don't waste your time. Because the people that are in the light that are outside of our culture, and there are people who are outside of our culture who are in the light, because remember, there is only one race on the planet, and that's the human race. And that human race is an African race. There's only one people, African people. And this is what Dr. Bruce Bynum is talking about, is the fact that you go from dark light to light. But black folk are light, but not light as it relates to the melanin content in your skin. Your light as it relates to the relationship that you have through nature with the cosmic forces of which we understood. And black folk have gone through hell and they've come back. And they have understood what it's like to be in hell, to live in hell, to study what happened to us as a people, and to understand this. You see, this is why today they're trying to ban books. They're trying to take away information. You know, I mean, I think that the governor of Florida is doing us a great service from my perspective, because I believe that he's telling us loud and clear, we people, some of European descent, have treated you people, African people, horrible. We have been, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we have been the devils on earth to you for what we've done to you. But you're not going to tell my children that. We're going to take away all the books that prove it. Because when my children come home and ask, what was granddaddy doing when Emmett Till was assassinated? I don't want to tell them granddaddy was part of the group that wanted him dead. When it was time to give the rights and responsibilities of black folk, and the fire department used to put the hoses on black people, men, women, and children, and literally would rip the clothes off their back because the water hose power of water was so strong, it would take the shirts off their back. What was grandpa doing? Well, grandpa was one of the firemen that was doing it. We're not going to tell that story. And we're going to take away those books. They're telling us how great we have been and how horrible they have been. We're interpreting the story, trying to fight. I got the curriculum. I teach the curriculum. So I understand, because I worked in Florida for a while developing their curriculum. And they said, you ain't going to teach this in schools. I know, because some of the teachers told me, I ain't teaching this to children. And they had all black children in their class and still didn't want to teach it because they know who we are. Our problem is we don't know who we are. We have been able to survive a maafa, the Kiswahili word for a terroristic disaster. And yet, Brother Vince, we still walk in the light. We still can come together as we're doing this Saturday morning, January 6th, and still have this conversation as human beings with a love that our ancestors called mer, M-E-R, sound mer. We use a word called agape, which is the highest form of love. But that's not the highest form of love. The highest form of love is mer. And mer is a feminine concept where the word Mary comes from, where water comes from, which is the highest form of love. It's a mother's love. It's a feminine love that brings forward a child, that nurtures and sustains life. This is who we are. You see, we know fundamentally, if we were to all pick up guns and go after these people for what they've done to us, we know that there would be tremor and it would be terror on the earth that would upset nature. So we trying to reconcile with these people, but they are not reconcilable. The only thing they know is war. They built their life on war. I taught social studies. The way you look at Egyptian or Kemetic history is by the great contributions that Africans made to the Kemetic civilization. That's the timeline. Pyramids, temples, spiritual evolution. But when you look at European history, it ain't nothing but a bunch of wars. That's their timeline. Wars. And what I did was I was doing research on the wars, like the major wars, like when you deal with the Moors from Spain, and then you have France, and then you have England. You have all those wars that happened from 1492 to the present time. But when I started doing research, and I went and I'm telling you, go on Google and just type in, or Wikipedia, go in and type wars in Europe, and 6 and 7 pages of wars. When the big wars were going on, there were little wars within the big wars. They have been in war with themselves from the very beginning. Ain't nothing but the Hatfields and the McCoys. They have brought war. Dr. Laila Africa talked about that. Dr. Laila Africa talked about it in one of the Hidden Colors series by Tariq Nasheed, where he talked about there was no real wars like this going on during the times that Africans ruled the world. There were skirmishes. There were problems. I'm not saying everything was wonderful, but war wasn't the way of life. War is the way of life now. Look at where we are now. Look at what's going on in the world right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me say one thing, Vince, and I'll give it back to you. You made a good point, and you know, something that I did research that about the wars, and you know, something that I'm working on, and and people would wonder why, you know, we would say, doggone, they got all our stuff, they going around the world taking everybody else's culture and things of that nature. If your very indigenous God consciousness is about getting close to God and understanding yourself and raising your level of consciousness, you know, you cannot build infrastructure and lay down structure and a system like Ma'at or something like that if you're constantly fighting. That's why they have to go around and steal everybody's culture and marvel at everybody else's culture, because they was busy fighting all the time. So they can build those temples all around the world, in Asia, India, Africa, and even here, because if you're fighting all the time, there's no room for elevation. Go ahead, my brother Vince.
Yeah, I just wanted to I guess veggie back on the references that we've made to Kemet and our ancient ancestors, and let everyone know that Kaba is actually going to be going to Kemet in June. So Kaba, can you talk to us about your plans to go to Egypt and take some folks with you?
You know, I've been going to I went to Kemet in 1983, and I went in 1987. And then I dedicated myself to developing a curricula and an understanding of our history and culture, and to dedicate myself to education and understand that. Always promising. And I've been asked by folk, do I go on tours? Do I develop tours? And over the past 2 years, I've been planning a tour. I never wanted to talk about it until it was in fruition. But now it is on its way. And I will be building on my information as time goes on as to the particulars of it. I'll be putting things up. But for right now, it's going to be between June 16th and June 26th of this year, 2024. And it's going and it's straddling what we call the summer solstice. Because on the 20th, on the day of the summer solstice, we are going to be in the temple of Edfu, where the celebration of the summer solstice takes place. It is the time on the earth where all are in glory and honor of the sun. On the summer solstice, which means the sun stands still, It is at its highest point, and all of nature, if you look at plants, it's the longest day of the sun being with us. All of nature raises up and leans towards the sun. So if you're east of the sun, you're going to pay homage. All of the animals on the planet, whether we realize it or not, just watch your animals on the summer solstice. Watch how they act on that day of the summer solstice. So we're organizing this trip, and I am co-hosting it with brother Omega Axel. You can go to his website. He's already put the piece up, and I'll be posting on my Instagram page, Kaba Kamene. That's my address, Kaba Kamene, on Instagram. And I will be continuing to let the community know of the progress of what we're doing. But right now, the dates are June 16th to June 26th. If anyone would like to begin to think about going on this tour, it's a 10-day tour. And we are going to be going to various places in Kemet while we're there. We'll be based in what's called Waset, or what we know as Luxor. And we'll be going to the various temples, the Karnak. We'll be going to the pyramids. But my contribution, and this is what I told Omega Axel frequently, was that I wanted to do the education in the evening part. I wanted to do the math and the science of our ancestors. I wanted to show you that the temple at the Grand Lodge of Luxor was fashioned after the human body. Huge temple, city blocks long, but it unfolds the story of the human body. And I wanted to get into the engineering and the science of it. While Omega Axel will actually be doing the tours in the day, of which I will participate in. That's what he will be doing. He will be taking us to these various sites. He will be teaching us about these sites. Now, when I get back and we get back into our place of residence, our hotels where we'll be, I'll be doing a class so that we will have, and everybody will get a PDF copy of my curricula on these areas to understand how great we come from this legacy. I have got a webinar on my site. It's called The Hands That Built the Pyramids, Built the White House. There is evidence of Africans traveling from the east to the west of Africa with this knowledge and wisdom. And in these communities of West Africa, where they stole our people and brought to America, in the DNA of the people from Senegal or from Congo, in the DNA of those Nigerians, wherever they stole us from in West Africa, the DNA of the pyramid builders is there. There was a lively relationship between West Africa and East Africa. See, we glorify Egypt, rightfully so, it deserves it. But great things were being built in Nigeria when our ancestors were building the pyramids in Kush, Kemet, or Egypt. It's important for us to understand. Dr. John Henry Clark, whom I consider to be my teacher, often told us, we get caught up in Egypt, but we don't understand all of Africa was great. There was great things happening in Southern Africa when the pyramids were being built. Great things happening in Central Africa, North Africa, West Africa. Don't get just caught up in Kemet. All of Africa was great. The same deities and Neteru and those forces of nature that was honored in Kemet, where they have the different Neteru, such as Heru, and you have Aset, Nebetet, you have Sobek, the crocodile, you have Tehuti, the bird, Ma'at, who is the ostrich feather. You have the same concepts in West Africa. They just go by different names. Same concept. There's a book written by a brilliant West African brother. His name is Dr. J. Lucas Olumide, Alumide. He has a book called The Gods of Yoruba, where he connects West Africa with East Africa. And there were things that came from West Africa to East Africa. It just wasn't the greatness of East Africa that taught all of Africa. There was trade between these two nations for thousands of years. But if you knew that, you would understand how great you are, and you would understand that we built America. We built America. They'll tell you immigrants built America. Immigrants did not build America. Enslaved Africans built America. And in building America, you know, it's like this. Somebody come and steal your house, the land on your house, your land. They steal your land. Okay, that's what they did to the indigenous people, who were black also, but that's a side story. Steal the land. Then they steal a people and they bring them on the land and they build the house. And then after the house is built, the rooms are built, all of the infrastructure is there. Then they bring people from outside the world to come in and they help to furnish the house. But they didn't build the house and the land is not theirs. This is what has happened in the world. This is the way it is in India. It's in Asia. You can go all around the world. And if you go far, if you get down and get in deep, every civilization in the world, Europe, Asia, wherever you go, America, if you go to the beginnings of those civilizations, every one of them is black. Science, not personal.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. You talked about it, but then the relationship to other parts of the continent of Africa, and just looking at the size of that continent and having an awareness of the expansive aspect of it. But way back then, there were connections between these people. Our good friend Tony Browder has done some research, and he believes that there may be a link between Adinkra symbols and Kemet. So you see evidence of West Africa in Northeast Africa, which goes to prove the point that you're making, and that is that we're all Africans, and there is more to our ancient civilizations than just what happened in Kemet. So I'm really happy to hear that you're doing this tour, and I want to make sure that people can take advantage of it, because when they go, they're not just going to ooh and ah, they're going to learn something. We started our conversation talking about time, and I think it would be important to illustrate the fact that the things that were built back then had a direct relationship with nature. So I'm really blown away by the fact that you're timing this journey with the summer solstice, and being there in Luxor, you'll be able to witness one of those astronomical events that relates to where the sun is, the position of the sun at that point in time. Same thing with the Great Pyramid at the Giza Plateau, Khufu. You know that it was constructed in such a way that the light from a star in the sky would shine into a shaft. It was built with that precision. So we'll let everyone know that they can go to your website. They can also contact you on Instagram and reach out to you and get more details about this. We're going to do the best that we can to also reference some of the books that you've mentioned in the course of this program. That's one of the things that I like about what you do, Brother Kamene, because you don't just give people information, you give them sources so that they can do the research for themselves. They don't have to take everything that you say at face value, but do your homework, and then you get an education that way. We're going to transition to a live stream on Facebook and YouTube as we depart from our terrestrial signal here on AM 1490 WERE. So at this point, we just want everyone to know that if you want to continue to take part in our conversation, you can look us up, a 360 Info Network on Facebook. You can go to my Facebook channel. You can also go to my YouTube channel, and you can go to Hamtonio's YouTube channel, with Hamtonio, and we can continue this conversation. So once again, those of you who want to reach out to him, you can go to Instagram and just go Kaba Kamene. It's that simple, and you can find out about the things that he's doing We have just about a minute left. Any specific message you want to give our listeners before we make our transition, Brother
Hey,
Kyle?
before you do it, Brother Caba, just mention, I wanted to throw in too before people cut off on terrestrial radio about the books, and you got the children's books as well on the Shabaka Stone and the other. Could you just mention those children books real quick?
Yes, the two books that I've written for children, Thoughts from a Black Light, which is for young children to understand basic principles of Kush and West African history. And also, I wrote a book. Shabaka Stone was such an important book to me to write for the community. I also wrote Shabaka Stone for children. That you can order. You can go to my website, kabakamene.com, and you can order it there. If you are outside of the United States, I recommend you go to Amazon, because the price that it costs to send it to you is more than the book itself. Amazon, you can get the book, and it's much less expensive for you, and it would be the same book. And all of my books are on Amazon, so
Oh,
that's one thing. And then just an ending, I just want to say something that you said, Brother Vince. I don't want you to believe a word I say. As a teacher, I believe our job is not to make you believe us. I just want to make us think. What I say, I just want us to think. And that's why I give you books to go to, because I
okay.
want you to know the resources and the sources that I've gone to get this information.
All right. We got to cut it right here and just thank our engineer, Tone Harley, for bringing us together. And always know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. We'll see you on Facebook and YouTube. Peace.
Peace.
All right. So we're live to Facebook and YouTube, and we have with us Kaba Kamene. You've heard about some of the books that he has. He also has a website. And Kaba, you're also teaching classes online. So before time gets away from us, let us know about how people can tune into your website and take advantage of the educational opportunities that are there.
You can go to my website, www.kabakamene.com, Kabakamene as a name, and you can download my free e-course and study guide. You put your email into the slot, and the first day of my e-course and my study guide will come down to you. And then every day after that will come another day of the e-course itself. It'll send you over to a place called Gumroad. That's who distributes my work. And that's how you can contact me there. My Instagram page, Kaba Kamene, is really what I consider to be my my community bulletin board. That is where I put up information. That is where I let you know where I'll be. Different things that you might want to know about me, it's there. So I encourage you to go to my Instagram page to understand the work that we're doing, and also the idea of the website, where it has a lot of different things that I've produced: webinars, quibinars. Quick webinars is what quibinars are, which is basically teaching methodologies, because that's really my background. Um, and that's how you can contact me. And again, the work that we're doing is coming forward in a way that I just thank the community for their support. And I thank my brother Vince and my brother Hamtonio for inviting me on this program and to be able to share this knowledge and wisdom with our community. Because time is shifting now, family. There are changes occurring in the world right now. Western civilization has just about had all that it can handle. It's just about over now for them.
Mhm.
You can see it. I can smell rigor mortis has set in this dying.
Yeah. Well, there are some who say that at this point we're kind of in the age of Aquarius, and I don't know how tied you are to astrology, but we've talked about the third dimension and the fifth dimension, and you've talked about how people are becoming basically vessels of light. Some folks talk light workers, uh, folks who are kind of conscious and aware, and the folks who are in the world today that are making a difference in the lives of others, being part of that whole paradigm of light that you spoke of. What are your thoughts about the phenomenon of light workers as we navigate what some are perceiving as the age of Aquarius?
Well, in terms of light workers, each and every one of us is a light worker. We are light encased in this physical body. And we are all, you were born with everything you need. And I think that a light worker is like a teacher. And I've always seen teachers, I've always felt as a teacher, my job was to facilitate you knowing you already know all this information. And it's important that, because sometimes people want you to believe them when they talk to you. I don't. That's not important to me. In fact, I would be discouraged if you just accepted what I said. And this is why I always use references. This is why my study guide has lists of books that you can go to at least get a sense of where I went to get my information. And so it just becomes important that this age of, see, we talked earlier about this calendar, but there's another calendar of 26,000 years. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. There are 12 houses, just like we have 12 astrological signs, same concept, 12 houses. But unlike 30 or 31-day cycles of that astrological sign that we live in now, each house lasted 2,160 years. We are leaving the age of Pisces. We are leaving Pisces and we're moving into what's called Aquarius, but our ancestors called this time Hapi, Hapi, which is what they called which was called the Nile River. Our ancestors called it Hapi. And this is the age of Hapi. This is the age of the water. This is the age of returning back to your source, where you came from. This is the time now that we are going to embrace our history. And this is why you see the world going through the phenomenon and the nomenon that it's going through. This is why you see the upheavals of war. The very worst of humanity in certain parts of the world is coming forward. The murder, the mayhem, it's all part of the earth cleansing itself of those forces of evil. And so we're living through this process right now. And this is why I tell us as a people, we got to get ourselves together. It is time now for us to get ourselves together. Do you know Indo-European civilizations, none of them have lasted more than 500 years. Now, I know that we're in the middle of this civilization, but this civilization isn't really it's a little over 500 years if you want to consider 1492. But even this civilization is on its way out. You can see it. My question to you is, like they always say, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Well, my question to you is, are you paying more for things today than you were before? Any civilization that is challenging your survival as time goes on is declining. It is not inclining, it is declining. If you're paying more for food, if you're struggling more to survive, no matter where you are in your station of life, I'm not talking about the ultra rich, I'm talking about the regular people. If you're struggling, things are getting to a point where the civilization is declining. When you go back to the Persians in 525 BC, when they invaded Kush, Kemet, or Egypt, okay, from 525, they overtook the Kushites. There was a change in terms of the Bronze Age going into the Iron Age. And there were just things that were going on in the world back then in 525 BC. The Persians stayed as a world power up until give or take 332 BC, a little over 180 years. That's when the Greeks came in. And the Greeks ruled the world, basically, if you want to call it that, from 332 to 30 BC, which is a little over 300 something years. Okay. And then the Romans came in. And the Romans ruled the world from about 30 BC. Some people say 426. I'd say they were fallen before that. But let's just say 426. And so when you look at that, the Roman Empire existed, what, 456 years from 30 BC? Add 30 plus 426, 426 AD. They didn't last 500 years. And then after the Roman Empire, Europe went into darkness. Great things are still happening in Africa now. There was civilization, but they're not going to focus on what's going on in Africa. They're only going to tell you what's happening in Europe. Europe went in the Dark Ages, and it wasn't until 711 when Tariq went into Spain, took that over, and brought culture back into the world, which he should have stayed out of that, but that's a whole nother point. But Africans ruled the world from 711 until 1492, and then from 1492 to now, look at where we are. And this civilization is falling. And once again, it's going to fall on black folk to save the world again. Because every time they've taken over, they messed up, and they messed up for the same exact reason. They turned their back on nature, and they separated themselves from nature, and they created a superficial AI in every phase, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Think about that. Artificial intelligence.
Wow.
To African people, it's ancestral intelligence.
Right. Yeah. Quick thing, Doc. I'm thinking about and going back and about your book, spirituality before religion, and I think this comic would kind of like touch on that as well, because when you start talking about we don't understand um, different things as far as spirituality is concerned, and you're saying that we have everything already in us. I remember we had those conversations before, that you were born with everything, and actually a teacher just brings out what's already inside of you. But one thing I think is interesting and might touch on your spirituality piece about numbers, and symbols and things like that our African ancestors dealt with, because we just deal with the quantitative values of numbers, but there's a spiritual and a symbolic meaning to numbers that we don't tend to even touch bases on or even understand what was going on with those Adinkra symbols that we're talking about. That was just art. There was a deep meaning behind that, and when you start talking about that, it brings in all kind of universal forces that we that is unseen in that other dimensional worlds that you're talking about, and that's some of the things and most of the things that we're null and void of as people, because we're walking through life every day with these forces unbeknownst to us that is impeding on our very existence and emotions and things like that. So I think we need to get back to some of that particular knowledge of understanding on how we teach our children and how we look at the world and moving forward. Your thoughts?
My thoughts is that when, again, we talked about in previous during the radio interview, we talked about the three gifts that the highest form of the animal world was given, who is us, the human: intellect, reasoning, and language. That's what separates us from all other organic life, is that we have the ability to have intellect, that we have reasoning, and we have language. And the concept is that when we ordered and arranged our universe, Atum in the Shabaka stone, from the African perspective, Atum named all things into existence, called things into existence, gave them names. And when Atum gave names, they always existed, but Atum, in naming something, brought it into existence because it now has a name. And it differentiated itself from all other things. And so, in so doing, when you think about that, numbers is ordering and arranging. Just like naming something, numbers also creates time, because now you have from one moment to the next moment. And in so ordering that concept, you also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You also have symbols such as you have the Indinkra symbols, you have the Neteru, but you also have what we call the script, which is A, B, C, D. Now, I know that we think that we speak English, but English is not a language. Spanish is not a language. French is not a language. To be a language, you have to have a script, a symbolic ordering and arranging of that linguistical ability. You have to have a script specific to that language. We use Greek script, but there's no such thing as Greek script, because the Rosetta Stone was found in a place that they called Rosetta in Egypt, and it has 3 languages. It has Medu Neter, or hieroglyphs. Medu Neter is the African sacred script on top. Then underneath that, it has a second language known as Hieratic, which is a script of the Medu Neter. And then they have what they call classic Greek. But that's not classic Greek. That's another African script that the Greeks adapted.
Yep.
There's no such thing as Greek script. And the evidence of it is very clear, because all of the so-called great thinkers of Greece, which didn't exist at the time, but these individuals, because Alexander and them, they were Macedonians. They were not Greeks. The Greeks didn't exist. This is an illusion that we're living. And so that when you have this concept of this alphabet, the A, B, C, D, that's an African script. There is no Greek script. And so what you're dealing with, you found you found a structure that had various languages script. And yet when we teach our children and they say this is English, it's not English. When we write our ABCs, that is an African script language. When we write Spanish, that's African script. French is African script. German, same symbols. Same symbols. In English, you have the word blue, the color blue, B-L-U-E. In Spanish, you have azul, A-Z-U-L. Same letters, they're just symbolically, they're put different ways. Same letters, but they're just rearranged. German, same thing. French, same thing. Romanian, same thing. Italian, same thing.
I be Russian too.
Well, Russian now comes from another brother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was what this brother did was that, see, most languages come from poets and writers. Most languages get their grammar and syntax from poets and writers, because that's what they do. They write and they form letters, like what they said Shakespeare did to English. You have a brother named Antara. He was the one that put the grammar and syntax to what we call Arabic, or Arabic. Arabic comes out of the mountains of Ethiopia. Okay, so that when you're understanding this language, you look at the Chinese language, same exact thing. Japanese language, same exact thing. So that as we understand this story, people say to me all the time, you know, you always talk about like everything came from Africa. Well, yeah, it did. So, you know, it did. Everything came from Africa. Get over it. Cry your river, build a bridge, but get over it, because that's where it came from. Africa was the source and the beginnings and the conception. You know, Africans were conceived, born, nurtured, sustained, educated, civilized, technologized in Africa. And when Africans got their show together, then they took their civilization and they peopled the planet. So get over it. Yeah, everything came from Africa. There's only one human race, and that's African. It don't make a difference if you're from Ukraine, if you are from Japan. It doesn't make a difference where you are from. You all are Africans who migrated at a particular time in history. It's just the way it is.
Brother Kaba, you mentioned Africa, and I'm curious about your vision for the future of the continent as we see younger people getting more involved in government and pushing back against the things that colonialism has done to Africa. You talked about how it's going to be necessary for basically black folk to save the planet, for lack of a better way of putting it. What are your thoughts about the direction that politics and economics are taking place right now? And I say that just thinking about what you said about everyday people, and what I was getting from what you were saying was how economics and money systems have been used to control populations. You know, when we have talks about economics frequently on this program. And one of the things that I've arrived at is the extent to which bankers control everything, because the bankers control the corporations, the corporations control the governments, which are basically just corporations that masquerade as government. But I'm just wondering how you're seeing things unfolding on the continent as we see these changes in our economic system unfolding now.
As we speak, we see the younger generation of African people rejecting colonialism and, quite frankly, kicking outside people out of Africa, escorting diplomats to the plains to send them back where they came from. They are unifying Africa as a language. They're looking at developing Kiswahili as a working language. We need to start looking at Kiswahili as a practical language spoken that unifies us as a people. You are from Ghana, you speak Twi. I go to Ghana, I speak English. We should be able to speak to each other in Kiswahili. I go to Brazil, brothers and sisters speak Portuguese. I speak English. We should speak Kiswahili to each other. I go to Holland, brothers and sisters speak Dutch. I speak English. We should speak English to each other. A brother or sister from Puerto Rico that speaks Spanish goes to London. London, they speak English. Brothers and sisters from Puerto Rico speak Spanish. They should be able to speak Kiswahili to each other. Kiswahili is the largest African language spoken in the world. And while it has borrowed words from other languages, it is deeply steeped in the Niger-Congo consciousness, which is the original language that was first spoken on the planet, that came out of the Click language. Africa now is uniting its economic. It is now breaking down the boundaries of the countries that were falsely created by the conference in 1885, the Berlin Conference that carved up Africa. They are now changing the very structure. Africa is the future wealth of the planet, family. Understand that. When in the beginning of when the land and the water were at war with each other, and the land came up and stayed up, there was a continent that in science is called Pangaea. Our ancestors called it Ptah. It came up out of the water and it stood there. Huge landmass stood up out of the water. And the sun's rays directly came down on this mountain. At the tip of the mountain, At the top of this mountain is what we today call the continent of Africa. And then it began to divide and split into the continents that we know. But from the very beginning of time, the first essence that got most of the sunlight was what we call Africa. That is why it is the richest place on the planet, because it has derived the energy and the resources of the light, heat, and sound energy of the sun. We have to know this, family. Africa is wealth. That's why everybody's trying to get there. Africa is wealth. Economics does not mean money. Echo comes from the Greek word, although Greek don't exist, but let's just play around. Comes from the word oikos, O-I-K-O-S. That's why you have ecology, which is the study of land, of your home. Economics is to know your home, know your land. It's the wealth. Land is wealth. You don't own land. You can't own land. That's nature. You don't own nature. See, the human family, when they moved into that consciousness where they thought they were better than nature, where they thought they could fool nature, they began to think they were better than nature. They didn't see themselves as part of nature. See, Africans see themselves as nature. They are part of nature. As you treat the trees and the plants,
Yes.
you treat the animals is how you treat yourself. You don't disrespect nature. You love nature. You don't pollute the water. You don't pollute the land. You don't pollute the air. You have to be out of your mind to do that. But when you've been up in the ice for all those thousands of years, you come back down with a misunderstanding of nature, because the nature of the ice age was very hostile towards you. So you create a hostile mentality. But when you are one with nature in Africa, where nature loves you for the most part, sometimes you had some dry seasons. I understand that. But for the most part, when nature gives you your food, when nature allows you to grow and to eat and to prosper, your economics is the wealth of the land, but you don't own it. You live with it, and it loves you and you love it. And in that symbiotic relationship, our ancestors created civilizations. Now we think that economics is banking and money. Ain't nothing but an illusion. Ain't nothing but paper. Plus, pretty soon ain't going to be no money. Everything's going to work through that card. Everything you do is going to work through a card one day, because they're going to try to control you. But family, I'm going to tell you something. That ain't going to work. Yeah, everybody talking about they're afraid of artificial intelligence. Ain't nothing wrong with artificial intelligence. It's what you do. It's what you do with it. But most importantly, understand there is nothing more powerful than natural intelligence. AI to me is ancestral intelligence. It's natural. Okay, this is wonderful. But all this does is allows us to do what we should be doing anyway, which is talking to each other. This isn't anything so great. We've been doing this for years. We talk to each other. That's what this is. When I teach children, I have a method of teaching that has been called SCAMPER, SCAMPER. It's an acronym, where I call it teaching to the inventor's mind. When I'm teaching math to a child, I'm not just teaching math. What I'm attempting to do is ask the child, how can you take this and do something that has not been done before? How can you invent something with this? It's not just about knowing something. It's about intellect, and then you reason, and then in language you tell me, what can you do with this that goes beyond how I gave it to you? How can you make this better? It's called SCAMPER. The S stands for substitute something for it. The C stands for to combine. A is to adapt to another level. M is to minimize or to maximize it. The P stands for put in something else. that takes it to the next level. E is eliminate, and R is to repeat the concepts or to put it in place. Here's an example. Years ago, when I first went to Kemet, I had a camera. Okay. And if I wanted to call home back then in the 80s, I would have to go to the front desk to call. If I wanted to go online to talk to somebody, well, it didn't exist. The point I'm making is now we have a phone. We have a phone where we can see the world in time, right in time, and to understand. So what is this? This is a combination of certain things. This combination of a camera, a phone, a computer, and all the other things that it has. And it's minimized, because if you all remember the phones that we used to carry back in the 90s, they were much bigger than this. And now you have phones that you can actually carry in your pocket. So that I once did a program with high school students years ago where I said, let's think about how to put things together. And I said, just imagine a pair of glasses that the glasses themselves had cameras and that you could connect. Now this is years ago. And I said, you can actually put earphones in where you can hear, so that, you have a camera that you carried around and you took pictures and things like that. And then you had the sound and everything. Imagine glasses that instead of having to put the camera on your shoulder, you actually had a glass. And Bose, BOSE, now has them. They're out here and they're a couple $100. They're not cheap, but they exist. And so what I'm telling children and what I tell students is imagine, take it to the next level. And the one thing that I can tell you is that, going back to your question, Brother Vince, Africa is the future wealth of the planet. It has every resource, every animal, every plant that exists anywhere in the world exists in Africa. And it's for scientific reasons. I'm not just saying it to be saying it. When this landmass came up out of the water at the tip of the hill, at the tip of the mountain of this landmass that came out, this part of the land on the earth that we call the land masses, that has had the most sun for the most amount of time, is what we today call the continent of Africa. It is rich in resources. Everything that we do with our phone and our computer, the minerals, the gems, and everything come from Africa. Solar power is the future wealth of the planet. Teach the children about solar power. Teach them about the sun, the photosphere. Okay? Teach them about the core of the sun. Teach them about the sunspots. Teach them about the sun. That's where you can start. Just get a book on the sun and study it. And then look at solar panels. And if you want a free book, you can go to Kindle and you can get a book called Solar Power Demystified for free. Solar power is why the pyramids were built. Solar power is what built the temples. So that when you're looking at economics, Africa got natural economics. They don't have to create economics. The land is their economics.
Yeah, brother Kaba. I think you made an important point too when we talk about the differences in consciousness and understanding when it comes to nature and living amongst our European friends. I used to give an analogy of when they read the Bible, when it says God gave man dominion, that they interpret that as, since I'm the highest on the food chain, that I can do anything that I want with the planet, and things like that. But our African brothers and sisters, when we going back and still talking about spirituality, they understood that there was a relationship. Man must learn how to live in harmony with the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. And but he, by looking at the history, you can see that there was no relationship. And the last thing I wanted to say is may hurt some of our. I want to see your take on it as far as our Greek brothers, our Black Greek brothers, and Masonic brothers. They need to understand and know. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Kaba, but all the symbology and a lot of the things that they take upon themselves and get inducted and brand themselves and things, most of that symbology and stuff that they're taking on, it's not Greek, it's African. And unfortunately, I believe that a lot of them don't understand that.
You know, there's a book. Um, there's books written. Like, I know I have the Divine Nine. That's an interesting book. But James Brunson wrote a book dealing with the African origins of Greek fraternities and sororities. And when you look at the structure of the educational system of Africa, that's really what the fraternities are. That's what, when you look at all of the different chapters, when you look at all of the different temples, they're all based on the same model. And this is something that when we go to Kemet, you're going to see when we go to the Grand Lodge of Luxor, or what's called the Ipet at Waset, when you go to Karnak, when you go to various temples throughout Kemet, that's what the fraternities and the sororities and all of the Masonic lodges are based on. Okay. Masonic, it's not Freemasonry, it's Freemason, which means the son of the sun. Frey and son, son of the light, which is the final phase in the induction into the temple of knowledge and wisdom that human beings went through. It wasn't a secret society. It was the knowledge and wisdom that was imparted that appeared to be secret because it just wasn't out there for you to see. So you had to study it. So it's not that it was secret. The secret was in your mind. And if you were willing to open up your mind and study it, then you would understand it. And that's why the cosmos would open up to you. And when you look at the letters, that's why they call letters like alpha. Okay. Phi, beta, kappa, and all of these different letters. Okay. Really, those were not letters. Those were symbols in Medu Neter. For instance, alpha came from the vulture. That is why the vulture represents the letter A. And the reason why it represents the letter A is because the sound that a vulture makes is ak, ak, ak. And so in that sound came a visual. Out of the visual of the vulture, mut, came the script. So it just wasn't about alpha. When you look at omega, okay, omega and alpha, when you put omega over alpha, it becomes the Ankh. When you put omega, the symbol of omega, over the A of alpha, it becomes an Ankh. You can see the same symbol in West Africa. You can see the same symbol in Southern Africa. And so, with due respect, and I always say this because there is a fraternity that I was the faculty advisor for, called the Malik fraternity. It's been in existence since 1975. It's Malik fraternity. It's Malcolm's fraternity. I taught a college class on Malcolm X for 11 years, and that is why they asked me to be the faculty advisor. And no one could go through line. Nobody could go through the Malik fraternity in New Paltz without taking my class on Malcolm X. But the idea is Malcolm represents M-A-L-I-K, manhood, achievement, leadership, intellect, and knowledge. And so when you're dealing with the symbols, you got to go into the symbols, because what is A? A is mut, a feminine energy that nurtures and sustains its child, will take of its own body to feed the child if there's no food for the child to eat. That is the mother's love. Okay. When you look at all of the letters, see, the Greeks are superficial. They didn't get deep. They just gave you the letters. Okay. And the idea is that with respect, I'm not saying, because I don't, when I wrote Spirituality Before Religions, I wasn't trying to get people to leave Christianity or Hebrew or Islam or Rosicrucian or Buddhism. I wasn't trying to get them to leave it. I just wanted them to Africanize it. Go back to your roots. Go back to the source of who you are. Because when you go back to the source of your religion, you'll understand there is but one spiritual system that governs all of them. You're just expressing it a certain way. Just like when we speak Spanish, we speak French, we speak Dutch, we speak Kiswahili. We're all expressing the same idea. We just have a different way of speaking it, but it's the same idea. Okay? Mer is love. Amor in Spanish. Okay? Love in English. They all mean the same thing. You're just expressing it different. Christianity is the same thing as Hebrew, is the same thing as Rosicrucian, is the same thing as Confucianism, is the same thing as Zoroastrian. It's just that you're expressing it a certain way. What I'm saying is, let's go back to the source of all those religions and go back into Africa, read the walls of understanding, the utterances of our ancestors who had not only studied God, but became God. Each and every one of us is the creator having a human experience. They got us worshiping somebody out here because that's the way that the Western civilization has built their enslavement process. You're always looking outside yourself for all things that you need to do for yourself. But you were born with everything that you need. Everything you need, you were born with. What we need in life are teachers who will educe or draw out of us the understanding that we already know it. That's what education is. It's not about putting information in. It's about drawing your information out. It's like being in a dark room, can't see anything. You find a light switch, you turn the light on, and you see the television, you see the library shelves, you see the books, you see the tables, the chairs. My question to you is, did all those things appear in the room when you turned the light on? No, they were always there. Your light just wasn't on. We're born in a world of darkness, and we need people to come into our lives to show us where the light switch is, for us to turn the light on, and for us to come to realize we already know this. But you see, we're living in a pimpasta civilization that needs to pimp everybody off in order for them to be able to get what they call the wealth.
Mm.
See, this is a pimpasta civilization where we're pimping everybody off, as opposed to understanding, in opposed to competition, it's complementary. Because Brother Vince, and to Brother Hamtonio, and to all those, Frank Brown, you know, everybody, Jamie Moon, everybody that's on this, that's doing this, you know, when you rise, I rise. When the tide comes in, all boats rise, no matter how big or how small. When you rise, I rise. It is in my best interest to make sure that I do whatever I can to make you the best person you can be, because when you rise, I rise with you. And this is the African way. This is the original way. This is the universal way, the cosmic way of living. This is what Ma'at says. Ma'at says it is truth, justice, balance, harmony, order, arrangement. And my favorite characteristic of Ma'at is reciprocity. Because what go around comes around. And you shall reap what you have sown. When the Western world created what they created on the backs of people, you shall reap what you sow. And not just that, it shall be sevenfold. If you do good, Good will come back 7 times better for you. If you do bad, it'll come back to you 7 times bad. And I ask us as a people, if you really believe that what you did, what you gave, you would you act the way you act? And if you would hurt another person, knowing that that pain was going to come back to you sevenfold, you either don't believe it or you crazy. Either one, you got a problem.
Brother Kaba, I got to ask this question, and I know it's probably coming out of left field, but I heard something that Eddie Griffin said and something that was posted on social media a few months ago. And he was talking about math, and I know that you have a serious affinity for math, and you talk about the absoluteness of it and the precision of it and so forth and so on. But he said something that kind of think, you know, we use the equation 1 times 1 equals 1, and he said it's not true, because if you multiply something times itself, it ends up being more than just 1. Uh, so I wanted to take this opportunity to ask someone who I consider an expert on that as we wind down today. What are your thoughts about that equation?
I think it was Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard kind of brought that up, but go ahead.
Yeah, Eddie Griffin also mentioned it, and it just kind of struck me. So I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way. What do you think about it?
I think you have to separate the science of it from the spirituality of it. The science of it, as it relates to math, as it relates to calculations, 1 times 1 does equal 1. But if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, 1 times 1 creates a greater 1, but it's still 1. But it's a greater 1. So you could approach it from both perspectives. And Africans could do that. That is why the subtitle of my book, Spirituality Before Religions, is that spirituality is unseen science and science is seen spirituality. We have to be able to live in a dual world. Our ancestors were geniuses in being able to see 2 sides of the same hide. Okay? You don't have to ask if there's science because you know spirituality. You don't have to ask if spirituality exists because you see science. So that you can sing the chords in music. Do, re, mi, fa. Well, you can sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You began with do and you ended with do. But the second do is at a higher octave. So you can have a 1 times 1 equals 1. That's mathematically, scientifically correct. But if you took that to a philosophical or spiritual perspective, 1 times 1 is a greater 1 because you've timed it by itself. So what Eddie Griffin and what Terrence Howard said is correct, but it's the context in which you're looking at it which makes it more correct. Hope I've made sense of what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about that. I'm thinking about this idea of us being divine beings, you know, and how we can all be a part of that one. At the same time, we're all individuals. I kind of connect those two things, but I just have to tell you, you have dropped so much knowledge and so much wisdom on us, and we're so appreciative of your time. We know that you are doing so many things, but as Brother Hamtonio brought you on today, and he mentioned the things that you're involved in, we definitely want to make sure that people know about those things and plug in. You know, you offer so many resources. We can plug into those resources and get a deeper understanding of the things that we share with us. So I just thank you for being with us today and ask if there's anything that you'd like to share with us
Well,
before we part.
no, I'm gonna have him drop something on me and see if he remember what he dropped up on me before. You remember when you talked about the natural instinctive behavior of the crab, because we always call ourselves crab in the barrel, you know. So could you, in parting, in closing, could you give that analogy or that instinctive behavior of the crab in its natural inhabitant?
I often tell that story just to help us understand the impact of what we've been through as a people, and the purpose behind why we need to go back to our source, where we have to go back to our natural way of being. We are unnatural. We are natural beings living in an unnatural environment. And so it would only be natural for us to act unnatural in a unnatural environment as natural beings.
Right.
With that, we hear the story of the crabs in the basket, who are taken from the waters of their life and their source, put in a basket. And then, as one crab tries to get out to return back to its source, another crab will grab it and draw it back down. And so, what happens is that all the crabs in the basket keep themselves in the basket, because when one tries to get out to return back to its natural environment, it's pulled down by another crab. But if you took that basket of crabs and returned it back to their waters of their natural environment, crabs actually help each other in the waters to survive. They sit atop each other, and the crab on the top is the one that eats. And when that crab has dined sufficient, it goes down and it goes underneath to push the crabs up so that the next one will eat. And when that one has dined sufficient, it then goes down and draws the group up so that the next one eats. So that through the cycle of life in their natural environment, crabs actually help each other exist. And so when you take that crab or those crabs out of their natural environment, put them up on the land and put them in a basket, they are going to act unnatural. And so what we see us acting, and I know, Hamptonio, you see it every day. We observe each other growing and growing up in a project and teaching in the New York City Board of Education. I observed us as a people and how we conduct ourselves, how we put guns to each other's head to blow our heads off. I watch us as we grab each other and pull each other down. When somebody's going to try to do something good, we pull them down through cancel culture. I see how we talk about each other on the internet. I see what happens on these different types of programs where we're literally watching women, beautiful, intelligent, accomplished women, throw drinks in each other's face and kick each other and fight each other. And then I watch us as we wonder and we ask, what's wrong with our children? Well, we're what's wrong with our children, with the example that we're setting. But who set the example for us? How long have we been in this basket, in an unnatural environment?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't curse us. I don't talk about us because I know our history. But you see, like that slingshot, I put my mind in the slingshot and pulled it back in my own history. And I've watched us at a time when we didn't act like that. I watched us at a time when brothers used to refer to sisters as Kemet Neset Waret. That term in the Kushite language that my brother Mfudishi gave us, when he said that Kemet Neset Waret is a metaphor for the deep well of water that I go to drink from when I'm parched by the desert. Imagine that. For those who have been in Egypt, and for those who would like to come on that trip with me in June, when you've been in the desert, you've been parched. I ain't talking about thirsty. I'm talking about parched. When you talk, dust be coming out your mouth. You're so thirsty. Okay? That's parched. And when you're parched by the desert, there's only one thing that will satisfy you. There's only one thing that you need. There's only one thing on your mind, and that's water. And to think that brothers refer to their women not just as water when you're parched by the desert, not just a well, but she a deep well of water that you go to, which means that sister will solve every problem that you have. That's how we refer to our women. They weren't bitches. They weren't whores. They weren't pieces of. They were deep wells of water that we went to. And that was the balance of Ma'at, when we understood that those sisters were our complement. We live for them and they live for us. What a time.
Right.
So it's
Balance.
pulling us back to that time.
Mm.
Not for us just to go back and remember that, but to project us into the future to become that, because that's what we have to do. And family, as we close on and do our thing, as we go through our Saturday, I want to thank you for your time. Time is the most precious thing you have. You know, I just want to tell our young people, and I'd like us to tell our young people, it's going to be all right. Dr. King was right. We do have difficult days ahead. We have a lot of work that we have to do. But our ancestors didn't bring us this far to leave us like this. So keep on keeping on, because it ain't over till we win. Let the young people know we've been through worse times before. Not only did we get out, we got out with flying colors. We'll get out of this. It's going to take time, but each one has to reach one. Each one has to teach one. We have to go back in order to go forward. My brother Vince and my brother Hamtonio, I want to thank you for this opportunity, this wonderful conversation that we've had, and those that have tuned in and those that will tune in as you post this up. I just want to thank you again. I want you to encourage you to go to my Instagram page, Kaba Kamene, and to go to my website, kabakamene.com. Look at the work that we're doing, and understand how great you are, and understand that the future is ours. We just got to reach out and do it. Power is not in your hand. You are power. Black power. All power to the people.
Wow. I'm blown away. I don't know about you, brother Antonio, but I don't know that I could get any more than I am right now. So again, thank you, brother Kaba Kamene, and those of you who are watching, do the best that you can to connect with this great platform. He is an institution on our planet, and we are grateful for him. Peace, blessings, and prosperity to everyone, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.
Peace. Right on, my brother.